Hi, I'm Danzen and welcome back to Scrap Mechanic. Today's video is a creation showcase as well as a segue into my next videos on mini stabilizers and suspension glitches. Now, many of you would have recognized this bike. It's Khan's design. If you don't know Khan, he makes really great Scrap Mechanic videos on YouTube as well as some other games. Um, this bike is really nice. Though you would notice that I've done something slightly different in that I've used a off-road suspension piece instead of the shorter one. The reasoning for this is that the longer suspension piece does give a stronger suspension glitch instead of the shorter one, and you don't have to upgrade the shorter one to a level 5 either. Now, this one I have here is a level 2. That's not necessary at all. It's just one of my leftover suspension pieces. It's a great bike, but I do have a couple of, well, how should I say, nitpicks about it. So it does teeter-totter a little after a while, or if you turn too hard, for example. That might just be my frame rates, and we can probably tune it out by changing the controller angles or the sensor ranges and all that. Might be possible. The other thing is that the balancing of the bike does rely on the ground, so the sensors are looking at the ground, which means if the bike was on its side, was on the an incline sideways, the bike will try to balance against the inclined surface, which means that the bike itself would be perpendicular to that surface. And that's not really how bikes work in real life, and as well as it's not particularly stable. Now, I do have a version of my own bike, which uses a mini-stabiliser. Unfortunately, mini-stabilizers don't work perfectly, well, don't work as well in survival mode as it does in creative mode, which means I can't use my version of the bike in survival mode. So how mine works is basically I don't require this suspension glitch, please. So I'm just going to remove that, and instead I'm going to weld on my mini stabilizer here and hook this up to the steering. So yeah, this is basically my version using Khan's bike design, aesthetically at least. So the sensors now don't do anything because we've removed the suspension steering piece. So what happens in my design is that when we try to turn left or right, it tries to the creation tries to turn the mini stabilizer in the back here, but because the mini stabilizer resists that turning, the bike gets tilted instead. So watch, see, the bike leans one way and the other, and when you let go, it always goes back to center, vertical, and it drives really nice. And it doesn't have the issue of teeter-tottering or staying at an incline relative to the well, staying at an angle relative to an incline. If I can try to show it off here. Nope. Let me just so it always stays vertical relative to gravity. The issue with this in survival is that mini stabilizers or stabilizers in general, suspension glitches in general, are a lot weaker. And what happens is when we lean one way, it keeps leaning because the suspension stabilizing effect is not strong enough. And when you release it, it doesn't go back to perfectly vertical. Which is why I can't use my design in survival. Now let's head into creative mode and I'll show you what the proper one looks like. Welcome back to creative mode. And this here is my version of a bike. Now, I did take a lot of inspiration from Khan's bike, mainly using pipe pieces. My original design used the regular blocks and larger pieces, as well as the larger wheels, so it was really bulky. I really like Khan's design aesthetically, so I copied the aesthetics part. With the difference that I don't use any sensors, as you can see, and I rely on a mini stabilizer in the back here. Now let's take it for a spin. Oh, and yeah, I do use a gas engine. And let's go. I've just loaded this wheel, so I have no idea where I'm headed to. With this design, it'd be really nice if the devs actually included the ability to change the steering angles on this. That way, we can actually limit how much we lean and how much we turn the handles, the steering wheel. As you can see, it drives pretty well. It stays upright pretty nicely. Oop, whoa. There you go. Bit of airtime there. And it does really nice. It does, you know how in movies where the heroes come in a bike, and they always do a swerve thing before they stop. We can do it. We can do it with this. Let me just try to go straight first. And turn. There we go. See how cool that is. All right, let's talk a little bit about this creation here. So the mini-stabiliser is actually on another set of free floating bearings. Let me just take out the connection tool. As you can see, this set of bearings are not connected to anything. So this part is important. Otherwise, your whole creation will be locked by the suspension, the mini-stabiliser. So you'll tend to not have good contact with the ground. So if you lock these bearings, or if you don't have the bearings at all, your creation wouldn't be able to tilt this way. But there's no issue of that right now because it's on a free spinning bearing. What else is there to say about this other than, yeah, I did try to center the gas engine as well. Oh yeah, and it does pretty nice donuts if you rev up the speed. Let's see if we can do this. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's pretty cool, ain't it? Whoops, okay. That's enough. Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that because because we're using pipe pieces and all that, and in general it's quite a small bike, the weight is pretty low, hence you don't get as much traction on the wheels as well. So I really wanted this to go a lot faster, but it wasn't quite possible with a light frame like this one. Now, another thing to note is that even though this free spins, I mean, the mini stabilizer free rotates, it can't actually go the full 360 because the arms, because the forks holding it are quite short. So there's only so much it can rotate, which means that the bike can't actually do a full flip, a full 360 flip. Of course, if you wanted that, you could always extend the arms a little so that the mini stabilizer has space to do a full 360 turn, and you'd be able to do flips. And the stabilizer does a really good job in creative mode. See, it does. In creative mode, so it doesn't continuously lean. See, and it resists knocks pretty well as well. However, it's not infinite perfectly stabilizing, unfortunately. After a while, it does accumulate, especially if you do really hard knocks, but for the most part, it maintains a vertical position quite well. Let me see if I can find a huge cliff to jump off of and show you. This might do it. Probably not tall enough. No, that's not a cliff. Let's see if we can find another cliff. That was a nice knock. So yes, it's slightly off right now if you can see it against the cursor. But it's still really rideable at this point. Oh, this looks like it might be a cliff. Yep, that's a good knock. Yes, and we've gone off center a bit more right now. One of the reasons it goes off center is because the mini stabilizer doesn't have enough space to rotate, and it knocks on the frame of the bike itself. So if you had longer arms, the chances of it getting off center is a bit less as well. But yeah, that's all there is to it. I hope you like this design. I'll be uploading it to the workshop. Oh, and another thing to point out is, oops. The mini stabilizer I'm using is actually using the off-road suspension piece, which makes it 3 long. And that's a stronger version as well, as compared to just using the shorter suspension pieces. Alright, that's all. Please do watch the next videos, as that would be on how to make mini stabilizers, as well as I'll be talking about suspension glitches and the various tricks to using it. Alright, I'll see you then. Bye!